Hello, everybody, and welcome to a weekend review edition of the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell, and I'm doing the introduction because Ryan Bailey is not with us. He is watching Oasis. He is in his true happy place, but I am in my happy place, trying to come up with rhymes on the fly. It's not really my happy place. Let's see how it goes. It's a weekend review deadline day crossover event. The Premier League alone could soon eclipse $3 billion spent. Deadline day deals for Isak, Getty, and Visa feel imminent. English club spending feels hardly discriminant. But there were also games played and goals scored. That's a fact. Plus, 3 former Manchester United managers have now already been sacked. In the Premier League, 3-syllable Soboslai had Arsenal fans using 4-letter words. His free kick screamer helped separate Liverpool from the rest of the title-chasing herd. While at Brighton, a tiny baby boy defeated his legendary touchline rival. For James Milner and fans of handshake drama, it was an enjoyable revival. Chelsea continues to both win and make expensive signings. How they can fit more players into that locker room is a question worth mining. In Europe, Barca got a draw and Madrid got a win, and I watched Marseille's chaotic start to the season begin again. In MLS, the League's Cup final had Luis Suarez spitting mad, while Son Heung-min's home debut for LAFC was kind of bad. Joining me to break all that down and more is a leader of men, my solitary co-host, the pie connoisseur himself, Mr. Graham Ruthven.
Hello, Taylor Rockwell. What a way to start the show. Who needs Ryan Bailey? He's New Jersey's problem now.
Exactly. Let's keep him there. New Jersey, which I'm assuming he spends an enormous amount of time saying was actually Old Jersey, should be Old Jersey, should still be part of their Jersey, even though no one really knows what Jersey is, like, as a construct.
Yeah,
both the state and the British island.
Yeah, we know him all too well. That's exactly what he's spent his time doing. He's also almost certainly spent his time at a Chili's or an Olive Garden before going to the gig. I've only been to MetLife Stadium once before, and I got nachos, inverted commas. For people on YouTube, they're seeing the inverted commas right now. I got nachos. They were $15. Mm-hmm. They opened a bag of chips and then did 2 pumps of the fake plastic cheese. So I'll be disappointed if Ryan hasn't tried them, because I've spoken enough about them on this show in the past. What an experience it was.
The fake plastic cheese, kind of good though.
Oh yeah. Is the good kind of bad, isn't it?
Would that be illegal in Europe? I feel like that's an illegal substance. Yeah, it's a banned, possibly radioactive substance.
They have like a colour palette at the Food Standards Agency in the UK, and they're like, too fluorescent. It's the same with Fanta. Fanta's very different.
Graham, I'm glad that you enjoyed your nachos. I hope Ryan did as well. If he is a TGI Fridays connoisseur, to avoid stadium nachos is really off-brand for him. So we'll see how it goes. I look forward to him reporting back on that one. In the meantime, we have the weekend review. We have deadline day. Is this, Graham, the most chaotic deadline day we've seen in a while? It feels like it is for me.
I think it is. And not only is it the case that there are countless deals happening across the Premier League today, but big deals as well. Like the Isak one is probably going to break the Premier League transfer record. Johan Wissa going to Newcastle is going to be like £50 million plus. Like these are big deals, and I think today the estimation is that like £400 million is going to be spent just today alone in the Premier League. So I can't really recall a transfer deadline day like this before. So I'm looking forward to talking about it on the Patreon, and it'll almost certainly be out of date by the time it actually is published. But that's the fun of deadline day.
Yeah. I'm glad I checked the headlines before we started recording, because last night it was Erik ten Hag about to be sacked. Today it was Erik ten Hag sacked. So yes, news changes quickly, especially when transfers are involved. Graham, if I set the over-under at 10.5 as the number of Premier League clubs that will make a signing today, would you take the over or the under?
Over. I'm just off the top of my head. I can't. I that might be wrong, but it feels like over.
Yeah, it almost felt low to set it there. But the point I wanted to get to was like more than half of the teams, it feels like, are going to make signings or are rumored to make signings, and not just one. Several of them will be making multiple signings. It seems it's a little bit like if you got like a performance review from like your wife and children and a paycheck like the day before Christmas, and it was sort of like, well, we kind of know the situation. We got to try to figure some things out on the fly really quickly to make things happy. Because it's been a good start to the season for some Premier League clubs, a rough one for others, and all of them still seem to be spending. It's a wild one. I look forward to breaking it down and then breaking it down again later in the week, Graham.
Yeah, it's been a wild summer. I'm just trying to go through teams there, Taylor, working out the over on that. Like Arsenal are going to make a signing, Chelsea are going to make a signing, Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, Newcastle, Spurs. So there's already like 6 or 7 teams. So definitely smashing the under on that. Oh, the over, excuse me.
Oh, the over. I got you. Let's stick with Liverpool then and their 1-0 win over Arsenal. A game that I told multiple people I thought was going to be frenetic, high energy, back and forth, high scoring.
Same.
That is the second time I've predicted that this season. I have been wrong both times. A 1-0 win, courtesy of a free kick. A .03 XG free kick at that from Dominic Soboslai was the difference, Graham.
And what a free kick it was. Gary Neville on the UK broadcast over here called it Cristiano Ronaldo-esque, which is not how I would describe it because it actually went into the back of the net.
Right.
Unlike Cristiano Ronaldo's efforts over the last 10, 15 years. But yeah, it was a great free kick. Obviously a great moment, but not the most entertaining match that I have watched.
Why
and,
was that? Was that like a stylistic thing or was there more to it?
I mean, to be honest, I put a lot of the blame on Arsenal for that and the way that they set up. And this is the frustrating thing with Arsenal. And we can dig deeper into what their approach was in this game. But the terms of this game were set by Arsenal, who wanted this to be cagey, and they approached it in a similar way to that game at Old Trafford a couple of weeks ago on opening weekend, which I found frustrating then. And I found it frustrating again here, where it feels like Arsenal, with the squad that they have, the signings that they've made over the summer, they're playing with a handbrake on at the moment in these games. And I can understand why you would go to Anfield, which is one of the trickiest places to go in the Premier League to get a result. And I can understand why you would set up this way. I just don't know if you can win a Premier League title like this anymore. This to me, it feels reminiscent of the way that like Jose Mourinho would set up Chelsea to play back in the peak Mourinho days, when a point away at a title rival was a good result. But we are now in the days in the Premier League of like 90 points plus to win a title. And so I think you're going to have to go away to a Man City or a Liverpool or a Chelsea and beat them on their own patch. You're going to have to pick up wins here. You're going to have to get an advantage over these teams at some point in the season. So I don't know if Arsenal do enough in these games to impose themselves on the highest caliber opponents. And as I say, that's frustrating when I feel like they have the players to do that. What was the point of going out and building your attack and bringing in players like Eze and Gyökeres and Madueke? And Gyökeres and Madueke start this game, and it's not purely about the players that are on the pitch, because the approach itself from Arsenal I just found was a little bit too cautious. But what's the point in doing all these things so that when you go into these games, you do play with the handbrake on? And they got stung in the end, because Liverpool, it wasn't like Liverpool... It wasn't a back to the wall job for Arsenal here. It wasn't like Liverpool were creating loads either. They barely created anything. And to that point, Arteta might say for the majority of this game that his strategy worked. But you make the margins so thin, right? You leave yourself vulnerable to a bad refereeing call or a bad bounce of a ball or an absolute worldie of a free kick ended up in the top corner from 30 yards out, where that's what's going to decide the game. And it feels like Arsenal don't really need to do that, in my opinion.
So Joe is also not with us, so we can revert Graham to having conversations that Joe wouldn't approve of. We're 3 games into the season. I do not mean for this question to be as like hot takey as it will seem. It is a genuine question for you. Would that give you concern if you were an Arsenal supporter, that you have a manager who, it seems, is trying to be more practical, can still be, possession-oriented, high-pressing, lots of fun football, but it seems like is also trying to be more defensive, more direct on the counter? But then they've also made all of these signings that should have them on the front foot, should have them more as like the dominant team. Would you be nervous that there's that incongruity with Arsenal right now?
Yeah, I'd be nervous that this team is maybe incapable of taking the next step for one reason or another. I mean, Liverpool have got 9 points out of 9 to start this season. Coming into this game, though, they were vulnerable against Bournemouth. They were vulnerable away to Newcastle. Newcastle down to 10 men for the majority of that match, and Liverpool were frankly fortunate to come away with 3 points from that game. Coming into this one, if I'm Arsenal, and I know they've got injuries, right? I know they've got Saka injured, Odegaard's injured, although he comes off the bench in this game. William Saliba comes off after 3 minutes in this game, which is another blow. So I know that's maybe a mitigating factor. But we've seen this. There's a pattern here with Arsenal, right? I'm not making this judgment purely on this one single game. We've seen this countless times, even going back to that game at Old Trafford, where I was pretty critical of their approach there. This to now seem to be the time for me to go away to Liverpool at Anfield when they're a little bit vulnerable, when they're integrating a few signings. Liverpool right now, they're not fully bedded in. Ryan Gravenberch is not fully fit. Alexis McAllister is not fully fit. Now would seem to be the time to go and have a go at Liverpool. And we've seen Bournemouth and Newcastle really fluster Liverpool when teams have gone toe-to-toe with them early this season. So I can't understand. I felt like Liverpool actually probably breathed a sigh of relief when they saw how Arsenal were going to set up in this game, that they weren't going to be made to run hard and fast, and it wasn't going to be all that intense a match, because Liverpool maybe just backed themselves to have more difference makers, more attacking quality than Arsenal, and we kind of saw that in the game with what Szoboszlai produced from that free kick.
That's a really good way of explaining it, Graham. Thank you for that, because it gets to like the nuance of the situation. It's not as though this was a like comprehensively dominant Liverpool performance, nor was it a shambolic performance from Arsenal or anything like that. It's just there is a vulnerability about that present Liverpool team right now, a like relative vulnerability. They're a very, very good team, and so yeah, like you could have. Maybe if you're Arsenal, expected to go out and try to take the game to them and just try to make life difficult and try to catch them at home. And so that they didn't felt just a little bit disappointing in the end. Graham, one more question related to Arsenal, and it's another one that maybe feels like trolling but is not meant to. Did you see the Szoboszlai comment about Arsenal afterward?
I did not, no.
Okay.
What did he say?
Tell me if this is meant to be tongue-in-cheek or if he is being genuine in his praise. Okay, here's the quote. Arsenal had an unbelievable season last season, and of course the two before that. 3 times in a row to come second is a compliment. To keep on going behind City, with us, with Chelsea, is really hard, and they always do it. Is that praise that they always stay in the top 4, that they're always in second, or is that basically saying like, oh, good try, buddies. You guys just keep trying every single time?
I think it's a reminder that Arsenal have finished second in each of the last 3 seasons. Feels very deliberate to me. I mean, I didn't see the body language or like the tone or anything, but
he did then wink and stick his tongue out. I don't know if that factors in.
But I mean, he hits at something important there, Szoboszlai, where these have the potential to be the games that will decide the title. I mean, Arsenal are 3 points behind Liverpool now already after 3 games. That could be the. That could be the difference. Like that is a large margin at the top of the table, 3 points between 2 quality teams. We think it's going to be a tight race between Liverpool and Arsenal. They're already behind Arsenal, and I think what's disappointing is, you know, Liverpool rebuilt a large portion of their squad coming into this season, and so if you're looking at the 2 teams there. If you were to pick one that to start fast and hit the ground running and be more of like the complete product, we've had this progress, we've had this process, we've added these players, and now we know what we are, and this is how we're going to do it. I would have picked Arsenal before the start of the season, but we didn't really see that in this game. And there's confusing things from Arsenal in this match. Like in the first half, the main excitement came from the risks that Arsenal were taking playing out from the back, right? So David Raya, he was determined to play those vertical passes into players right on the edge of his box. He did it, I think, 3 times. Once it led to, do you remember the one Van Dijk sort of nicks it and actually decides to play the pass when I thought he might have just had the shot himself. And so I understand why Arsenal do that. The idea is, loads of teams do this, but the idea is that you draw the Liverpool press and then you pop a pass around them and then you're away and into space. What I find funny about Arsenal is that they are willing to take those risks right on the edge of their box. They take loads of risks inside their own half, and a lot of the time, it's excellent play. They were doing something really interesting with drawing Gravenberch in midfield, and then they would pop it round the space into Calafiori, and 2 or 3 times in the first half, he got galloping into space. And so those rotations and those sequences for Arsenal inside their own half are really good. They're willing to take those risks on the edge of their box, but are so risk-averse as a team when they get into the attacking third. That seems like a disconnect to me, where when they do get into the attack, there isn't that same. They don't throw caution to the wind. There aren't those same sequences. I still feel like that's the next evolution for this Arsenal team, because we've just all watched too many games like this one where it feels like they're playing within themselves.
It stands to reason then that that's because with the goal kick you can sort of practice that. It can almost be like a designed play where you're practicing the patterns of how you pass, when you pass, the speed of the pass, and then in the attack maybe less attacking creativity, at least less attacking like repetition leads to maybe less familiarity in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair, but I would still expect the top level, like elite difference makers to have that repetition and that conviction. I mean, there were 2 moments. There was one in particular with Martinelli, who I think listeners will know at this point. I'm not his biggest fan, poor Gabriel. But there was a moment where Arsenal managed to get out and into quick transition, and the fact that Martinelli was in this team over Eze said to me that that's what Arsenal wanted to do in this game. For certainly 70 minutes of this game, as they wanted to play in those quick transition moments. And then Martinelli gets into space, and he just holds onto the ball, and he holds onto the ball, and he holds onto the ball, and then Liverpool make the tackle, and then the opportunity is gone. And so there's just that lack of conviction from a few players when they get into those positions. And they don't get into those positions often enough to justify the approach, for me anyway.
We have successfully done the thing of talking about the defeated team rather than the victorious team, but there is some interesting stuff going on with Arsenal. There's obviously some interesting stuff going on with Liverpool, both in terms of their continued pursuit of Alexander Isak, but also their start to the season. Graham, did this game make you feel like they definitely need to break the British transfer record to bring in another striker?
Not really, but it'll be fun to see how that goes, so... Can't wait for Alexander Isak to join this team. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but I'm interested to see it.
So, I think I meant that question genuinely, but also, again, it speaks to the confusion of the day. That, they win and get, a lot of their new signings involved, Liverpool, but at the same time, they don't, I think their XG is marginally better than Arsenal's, as is their possession statistic. It's not as though they were fully dominant. It's not as though they were creating chance after chance after chance. So there's a world in which you bring in one of the best strikers in the Premier League and suddenly everything's going to click, everything's going to look way better. But at the same time, they beat Arsenal, who we would assume will be in the top four and a title challenger, and they looked pretty solid even with injuries of their own, Liverpool. It's an odd one where it doesn't feel like a slam dunk that they're going to get Isak. It doesn't feel like, yep, that's the area of need. It is done and dusted. They're going to win the whole thing. But at the same time, it does feel like they're going to win the whole thing, and it does feel like it makes them considerably better. There's just a lot of potential drama, but also potential success there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this performance from Liverpool, I'm not entirely sure what their area of need would be, because I think in the two games that they've played so far against Bournemouth and Newcastle, you would look at central defence, where Ibrahima Konate has had a bit of a nightmare start to the season. I thought he was fine here. I thought physically against Gyökeres, I saw a stat that Gyökeres at half-time had 2 more touches of the ball than William Saliba in the first half of the game.
Wow.
That's William Saliba, who went off after 3 minutes due to injury. So Gyökeres was a non-factor in this game, particularly in the first half. And some of that was down to how Konate was matching up against him, Virgil van Dijk as well. So looking there, I didn't feel like there was a vulnerability where I have maybe thought that with Liverpool in the first 2 games of the season. I thought Milos Kerkez had a pretty good game, his best game for Liverpool so far. He's been pretty vulnerable so far, but here... Arsenal got into a couple good positions with Noni Madueke on the right side, who starts there because obviously Bukayo Saka's out injured at the moment. And there were 3 occasions in the first half alone where he was able to get isolated against Kerkez. And Arsenal were quick to go direct into Madueke. It was one of the few times and one of the few sequences that they had that I thought was working. But Kerkez in those moments was actually pretty strong. And I thought that was the most interesting duel on the pitch. On the right side of the defence, obviously Dominic Szoboszlai playing there is really, really interesting. Jeremy Frimpong is out injured right now. Obviously, it's the Szoboszlai free kick that ends up deciding this game. But in general, I find him playing as a right back really, really interesting, because he is closer. As weird as this may sound, right? And I would never have predicted that I would say this 3 games into the season. I didn't envisage this happening. He is closer in skill set to Alexander Arnold in that position than Jeremy Frimpong is. He's creative on the ball. He can go direct with those diagonal passes. He gets high on the right side to the point where he's basically a right midfielder, but then he will also move centrally as well, like Trent used to do. I think he made that movement for the free kick that he ends up, for the sequence that leads to the free kick. He's in a central position. I actually think he's more mobile than Alexander Arnold as well. He's a better ball carrier than Alexander Arnold was. And I don't know if he's got the defensive instincts to make that a long-term position for him against teams that maybe go direct against him and match up physically. But really interesting that Slot is using him there. So just throughout this Liverpool team, it feels like they have the options and they've got a manager who is willing and able to find solutions in the way that I'm just not totally there with. Arteta's done a great job with Arsenal. Clearly they are much, much stronger now than they were when he took over. But I just don't know if he has that grasp of every option within his squad that Arne Slot has proven himself to have over the last 2 seasons.
I speculated that if they did bring in Isak, it would be Ekitike moving to left wing to accommodate, or he would kind of be the deputy 9, the deputy left wing. 2 goals and 1 assist in 3 games is not a bad start for Ekitike for Liverpool. Has he made it difficult, do you think, for them to kind of move him out of the way delicately?
Certainly. Yeah, Ekitike's been great
right?
to start this season. I don't know what the plan is for him. I mean, what is good news for Ekitike is that Alexander-Arnold has basically been sitting in a Chili's or whatever the San Sebastian Real Sociedad equivalent is when he was training over there over the summer.
Yeah,
so I don't know if he's in a condition like I would predict, and I could be horribly wrong on this. I would predict that we don't really see Isak starting games until like mid to late October, given that he's not had a pre-season. He's not played games. Like these players not just they've got a pre-season in their legs, but they've got like actual minutes, competitive minutes in their legs. So Ekitike might have a bit more of a runway there for Liverpool to figure out what they're going to do with him, but I'm not sure.
I guess overall, this match and the transfer activity around these two teams is a reminder that like calm and like good branding, or maybe branding is the wrong way to put it, are so important, because the way I think of Arsenal and Liverpool these days are well-run clubs that will spend money, that find a way to win, that find a way to make things work. And so in this game, we've already talked about how like if it's maybe Chelsea losing this game playing the way Arsenal did, I'm more of a like, oh, like are things going wrong? Are the club going to be chaotic? And instead it's like, that doesn't feel very right. And similarly with Liverpool, if this is Chelsea winning and bringing in another striker, I am sort of scratching my head saying this doesn't feel necessary. It feels like an excess, and maybe that's going to end up costing them. But Liverpool have shown such a willingness and like a willingness to adapt and a capability to do so that it just sort of feels like a signing they'll get to bed in really quickly, and everybody will be fine with it, and there'll be one harmonious group that has a midfielder playing as a right back and a striker playing as a left winger and a left winger playing as a central midfielder, and yet it all looks kind of fine in the end.
Yeah, there's a plan here. There has to be a plan. I think one thing that is becoming apparent is Liverpool they've been pursuing Isak for longer than I think people realise. Have you seen the video that surfaced of Isak and Van Dijk after the Carabao Cup final? Have you seen that?
No.
So after the game, Newcastle have won. They're doing the handshakes and everything, and Isak goes to shake Van Dijk's hand, and he pulls Van Dijk closer in to say something into his ear. It very much looks like, doing a bit of lip reading here, it very much looks like he says, you better be staying for next season to Virgil van Dijk. And Van Dijk, this is the thing that makes me realise, Van Dijk turns round and looks at him like, what did you just say? Like, so, I don't know, with everything that's happened and how forcefully Isak has said Newcastle promised I could leave, and maybe this was, maybe this can be traced back to like as early as February or March.
And if it were Virgil saying like, okay, I will now if you're going to come.
Yeah.
Man, that's a sliding doors what if moment. I love transfer speculation. It's the best. I enjoyed this game as well. I've enjoyed the show so far, Graham, but we should take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the rest of the Premier League. We'll get to some Europe as well. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. We have finished up talking about Liverpool's 1-0 win over Arsenal, except that I am going to mention in the previews, I was concerned about Dominic Szoboszlai and where he would fit because he's a player I like. I thought they might end up like forgetting they had him in their roster until around like November. Here he is scoring goals and looking good. So I was wrong about that one. I was also maybe wrong about City challenging for the title. I had them as one of the favorites. I may even have predicted them to win the whole thing. Oh, yeah. It was if they're in touching distance by December, they'll win the whole thing. Graham, I'm not sure they're going to be in touching distance by December, at least based on this performance, this loss against Brighton.
Yeah, not based on this evidence. This was a real narrative buster of a game for Man City because Rodri finally back in the lineup for the first time since September
Narrative
of
buster.
Last year.
Narrative buster, Graham. Great point.
Yeah, that narrative has been busted well and truly. We all know how much they have missed him, but this was a reminder of how there's still a lot that Man City have yet to solve. I actually thought Rodri was pretty clean in his performance and did give City that sort of like rhythm building in the middle of the pitch. And actually for 60 minutes, City were on top in this game. They were getting Haaland into good areas. He had a good number of opportunities. Thought Oscar Bob was causing trouble with his dribbling on the right side. And for a lot of this year, I've thought the balance of the midfield has been the biggest issue. I didn't overly feel that in this game. I actually thought that trio of Rodri, Reinders and Bernardo worked quite well. But there is a disconnect with the defensive line in the midfield. I don't know whether that's purely on the midfield. I actually kind of look at some of the decisions and some of the performances in the defence and think that now looks like the bigger issue for City, where they don't have raw recovery speed. Their decision-making is repeatedly poor defensively, and I think the best example of that was for the winning Brighton goal, where Rico Lewis gets sucked up the field towards the ball. That then creates the space down the right side, down the City right, down the Brighton left, and then Diaz gets drawn over, and Brighton all of a sudden, for that goal, have a 4-on-2. And Gruda rounds the goalkeeper and finishes. So there were countless moments like that for Manchester City. And this game just got away from them in the second half. And some of that was down to the changes that Brighton made. Herzl made 4 changes, so it was Rutter on for Welbeck, Ayari on for Hinshelwood, Milner on for Baliba, and then Gruda on for Gomez. All 4 of those players made an impact for one reason or another. Gruda, he offered legs with his running in behind. Ayari, I thought, was really proactive at playing between the lines, and it just felt like Brighton were able to get more bodies forward. They had that platform, that freedom, and then they would send players forward, like in that attack that I just talked about for the second goal, where they have a 4-on-2 situation, and they just continually put City under pressure for the final 30 minutes. They won their duels, they won their second balls, they had the opportunity in that second half, and they went for it, and that was the difference.
You talked about those changes made by Fabian Herzl, Graham. It's bringing on James Milner, which doesn't necessarily feel like it's going to be a massive difference maker, but he comes on, scores the penalty. It's a really, really good penalty, very well disguised. Seems like he's very much going to his right, puts it to his left. But even then, if the goalkeeper had gone the right way, it's like perfectly in the side netting. You get Jorginho Rutter in there in the second half to kind of go at defenders, create opportunities. Brahim Gruda comes on. He gets the equalizing goal, I believe it was. Which
the winning goal, right? It's the second goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, the winning goal. He's on in the 61st. He gets the winning goal. So it feels like Brighton able to tap that bench and get kind of the response. And for City, I think my initial feeling after the game was like, oh, it's another game in which they take the lead, maybe assume that they'll get a second or a third, and then they take their foot off the gas and it doesn't go their way. Like, watching bits of this again, I'm not sure that's true. I think you've nailed it. I think it's just Brighton make really proactive changes in the second half and get a good performance out of those adjustments. Whereas with City, you have Nico O'Reilly and Jeremy Doku coming in once Brighton have equalized. And after that, it's just a lot of defenders on the bench. There's Rico Lewis who comes on. Yeah. There's Ruben Diaz who comes on. You've got Ederson still there on the bench. You've got Akanji. You've got Nathan Ake. It just maybe feels like City are light on difference makers. Some of that is due to injury. Ryan Cherky injured, Savinho out with a knock, Mateo Kovacic still recovering from an ACL. But it does make me wonder if maybe City need 1 or 2 more players before the window closes.
It doesn't sound like they're going to get those attackers. I mean, the deal that everyone's got their eye on today is Donnarumma coming in, which
another
in itself,
goalkeeper.
Another goalkeeper, and feels like a weird fit for this Manchester City team. I mean, I have my doubts about James Trafford and whether he's ready for this at 23 years old. Seems to be quite error-prone when playing out from the back, but at least he has the profile of a Manchester City goalkeeper. Donnarumma's not. That's why he's been sidelined at PSG. So feels like there's a disconnect there. And look, this might be in some way attributable to this being the first summer of Hugo Viana as the sporting director. It's a lot to ask of him to come into this club. City have moved on from the Begiristain era now. Pep doesn't have that relationship as well, so I don't know whether that's a factor too. But it just feels like City aren't entirely sure of what they are, or what they're moving into, or what they're transitioning into. Whereas like Brighton, they do know what their identity is. And looking at their squad, like, I'm not saying these are necessarily better players that they have, but they have options, right? I mean, Matt O'Reilly is sitting on the bench, doesn't come on in this game. Ferdi Kadioglu is the left back, right? That's the Turkish left back. He's a good player as well.
Yep.
So like, it just feels like other teams are built out more than Manchester City, and they faded badly in this game. Guardiola said they were tired towards the end of the match. I don't know whether that is a Club World Cup knock-on as well. Interested to see how that affects teams this season. But it seems like there might come a point this season where things click for Manchester City. It seems like there's a way off that right now, and it's not just one thing. It might need to be 2 or 3 things for them to take that step up.
Since I am now our resident Marseille viewer, I will note Matty O'Reilly, I think, heavily linked with a move to Marseille. That might be why he doesn't play. So maybe Gotcha. Brighton will be active in the market in terms of sales, but maybe they're also going to bring in one more player before the window slams shut. But a great win for them. I wonder if it moves Herzl further up, or maybe to the top of like the Joe Lowry, I don't like coaches, but here are the coaches I like index. I would say the next 2 we're going to talk about are also on that list. In Tottenham's 1-0 loss to Bournemouth. Graham, should we just spend some time with Areola and the praise thereof?
Or we could start with pouring one out to a sad violin tune for my Spurs enthusiasm, which has died a death this weekend.
Really?
No,
One
not
loss,
really.
did it?
No, not really. I mean, this was a bit of a reality check for Spurs after their impressive start to the season. I guess what might make this easier for Thomas Frank and Spurs to swallow is that Bournemouth were so good in this game. They were well worth the win. This wasn't a smash and grab. We've seen Bournemouth are capable of that. They like to, in certain games, sit deep and then hit teams on the counter. They did their fair share of that, but they also were high up the pitch in this match. And it actually reminded me of the way that Spurs played against Man City a week ago. Bournemouth basically recycled that game plan against Spurs, and Spurs didn't really have a way to respond. I thought Tyler Adams was outstanding in midfield. I think he's back to the sort of form that he showed around March, April time, when I thought that was the best soccer of his career. He started the season really well. And Bournemouth, they're just such an intelligent team because they know when to attack open space at speed. They have Evan Nielsen and Semenyo and Tavernier and Brooks on the right side, who I thought was excellent. They have the players to play that way. But then they can also construct with the ball in moments, and they push Truffert high on the left side and spread Semenyo out wide, and they create angles in the midfield. So they're just a very well coached team with talented players that have flown under the radar. And I know there was some concerns over the defensive talent that they lost over the summer, and maybe we will see that have an impact over the course of the season. But right now, Bournemouth look very, very good.
They're a team that I think also is easy for a neutral to not necessarily ignore, but I don't think of them as ever being appointment viewing. So Graham, they've got Brighton as their next game home when the league resumes. How would you sell Bournemouth versus Brighton to a person who's considering making that the game they're going to watch that weekend?
Here are all the players that Chelsea, Liverpool and PSG are going to spend £100 million on over the next 3 years. There's your selling. There's your sales pitch.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I like that one. Manchester United might also jump in there. You never know.
Well, for the bad players that they shouldn't spend £100 million on. Sorry, Taylor, couldn't resist. I mean,
Thanks,
Brighton and Bournemouth are just quite simply two of the best run clubs in the Premier League,
yep.
And they kind of defy expectation by being shapeshifters. I mean, Bournemouth are very much getting into. I think there's a class of team like Forest and Brentford. They're great at what they do, but they do kind of only do one thing very good, particularly Nottingham Forest. They're a very good counter-attacking team. They do not want the ball, and I think Brentford have been pretty similar in the last few seasons as well. Brighton and Bournemouth are shapeshifters. They adapt depending on the team that they're playing. And I know Bournemouth, against the highest caliber teams, they will sit back and they'll do the kind of Brentford or Forest thing. But as they showed in this match, they were high up. They were pressing high. They were hassling and harrying Spurs into mistakes inside their own box. And I just don't think Forest and Brentford, to a certain extent, do that. So they're just good soccer teams. So if you want to watch talented players that you're going to hear lots about in years to come and good soccer, then Brighton and Bournemouth are for you.
And as long as you're continuing to be generous in your sales pitch, do you want to try to sell why people should watch Manchester United other than chaotic reasons and the fact that their next game is against Manchester City?
No, that's the reason. It's chaos. Yeah, I mean, an important win for Manchester United against Burnley. Win that game 3-2. There was a point after the Grimsby game where I felt like Ruben Amorim might not survive into October, so this does buy him a bit of time. The performance for a lot of the game I thought was actually really good. Manchester United just can't stop themselves from getting in their own way, though, where they end up in this back and forth to and fro game against Burnley in the second half, and they have to rely on a Bruno Fernandes stoppage time penalty to get the 3 points. So I don't know what to make of this game, Taylor. What were your takeaways?
No, I mean that's about it. It's another one where at the end you have really emphatic celebrations. The players are clearly relieved to have gotten the win, but I think trying to show a little bit that they back the manager, that they want to perform for that manager. That's my read on it, at least. But at the same time, this is a Burnley team that we all uniformly picked to be relegated. So the idea that yes, a 97th minute winner from a Bruno penalty after an own goal and an Embuemo goal, it doesn't. I don't know if that's really the this is the rallying point, boys moment versus hey, we got the kind of the minimum done. And I think that's the situation Manchester United has put itself into, that even a good win still feels like, yeah, but I'm not sure if that's actually resolved anything. And I think it takes a few more results to maybe have things seeming like they are hunky-dory.
I mean, there were some clear positives to pick out of this performance. I think Brighton and Bournemouth is one of them. He's actually made a good start to life at Manchester United. He has been their best attacker this season. You can quite clearly see what Manchester United are trying to do. They want to switch the play out to him quickly. By the way, there was a great article. I meant to forward this to you, Taylor, over the weekend. I'll do it after the show. It's a great article on the BBC, one of the best things that I've read tactically, which totally laid out what Ruben Amorim wants to do at Manchester United and how he's not so much... You think of the best teams in the world, they're all about rotations. Amorim doesn't really want rotations. He wants overloads in wide areas, and so that requires like big switches out to players, and Brian Mbeumo seems to be someone who can make the most of those opportunities. So we saw in this game, he scores. There was a couple other opportunities for Man United to score from situations like that. I thought Mason Mount was really effective at winning the ball in the middle. I thought Ahmad was sharp at getting forward quickly, although he misses an absolute sitter with the goal gaping in the first half. Second half, though, is a totally different story, and the defending for the first Burnley goal was an absolute joke. It seems to come from Dalot and De Ligt like swapping, they're passing players onto each other. While Burnley are attacking, they get confused. That then gives Brun Larsen so much time to get the ball into the box, and because De Ligt hasn't got back into the middle yet from being out wide, from having the player passed on to him, Foster is just all alone in the middle for the finish. And the second goal was a mess as well, with the ball bouncing around the box. But that first goal was just so concerning to me from a Manchester United point of view of how defensively there's just not the level of organisation there that you would expect. And they haven't made any new signings in that area either. You would expect there would be that understanding.
Nah, goalkeeper. We're going to sign 2 or 3. It's going to be all good to go.
And play them at the same time?
Yeah, sure. No one's ever tried it. Get 2 goalkeepers in there, see what happens.
What about former Manchester United managers as co-managers at the same time? Like a super team of Mourinho, Solskjaer, and Ten Hag. The managers are really doing a number on the theory that if you leave Manchester United, things get better. That seems to be the one commonality across all things. Graham, one final question. Since Joe isn't here, we can spend another 30 seconds on Manchester United. Did that piece and the kind of explanation of Amorim's tactics, did it then make it make sense why it's harder to get the team playing the style that he wants, the way he wants? Is that a thing that requires a lot of kind of time and repetition, or do you still feel like maybe it should be happening much more readily than it is? It made me feel worse, to be honest, about Manchester United and Ruben Amorim. Yeah, my takeaway of it was this is a system and an approach that can work when you are a dominant team in a league. When you just have like better players. It seems the way that he sets them up. And I'll put this in the TSS Discord for listeners to read it. It was excellent. It was a really long, in-depth piece. But basically it highlighted how, as I say, Amorim doesn't want those rotations. So you're not really getting many like attacking sequences, and it relies on players just to be like better than their opposite numbers if you don't have those overloads. It made me think that unless Amorim changes, and he actually made comments after this game. I don't know if you saw this, Taylor. It was put to him again, the 3-4-3 question, and he offered a little bit of a concession. He basically said, look, I want to get this right first, and when we get that right, then I'll start to look at flexibility. And that's the first time I've ever heard him kind of make that concession or admit that he will change it over time. The problem is, I just think that 3-4-3 and the general approach, his principles, are Manchester United are in a position now where they are having to punch above their weight against like teams Chelsea and Arsenal and City and Liverpool. And I just don't know if this setup is going to allow them to do that. So
he just needs the one more full season as a season, to get ready for that next season. Yeah, that's it. He just needs one more preseason, full season, and then we're good to go.
It's all about 2030, 31.
That's the one. That's
the one they're building for.
I hope that that's what he's doing and that they're all buying that one. But yes, still a win, still 3 points for Manchester United. They move away from the relegation zone. Always a good thing. Chelsea did the same thing in their 2-0 win over Fulham, though it felt more like VAR getting the win over Fulham in the end.
Oh man, you can really tell that Joe's not on this show because we're going to do a VAR bit. Yeah, that is honestly the only thing to talk about from this game, because it just changed the dynamic of the game, and they went almost entirely against Fulham. So there was the disallowed Josh King goal, which was ruled out for something that didn't actually happen. A quote careless challenge was the reason given. but it was just a trod of the foot by Muniz, who had nowhere else to put his standing foot as he kind of like twirled around with the ball. And then the PGMOL on Sunday apologised for the decision and admitted that the wrong decision was made, which everyone apart from the referee and the VAR team could see. And then Chelsea scored in the 10th minute of 8 minutes of stoppage time, which they were delighted about. And then they were awarded a penalty for a handball, which may or may not have been a handball. But earlier in the move, it very much looked like João Pedro handled the ball himself, and that could have been given as a free kick to Fulham. So, Marco Silva wasn't very pleased about that. And the sad thing about all this for Fulham was they were the better team for large periods of the match. Chelsea struggled to create much from open play, couldn't handle the running coming at them from Sessegnon and Josh King and Alex Iwobi. So I think they got away with one here because there's no denying the VAR stuff changed the dynamic of the whole match.
We also have Liam Delap, not Roy Delap, off with injury in the 14th minute, and that cues panic for Chelsea, it seems. Nicholas Jackson was in Germany. The Bayern Munich move seemed like it was very much about to happen. Now he is back with Chelsea because suddenly they were worried about their depth. Same thing with Loney Gooey, I think is how I'm supposed to say his name. Did we get there in the end, Mark Gooey?
Someone sent me a video of how to say it. I think it's like Je or something a bit more like that rather than Gooey. Ed Gooey, Chelsea goalkeeper. But Taylor, just to go back to Nicholas Jackson, there's definitely...
Well, I should just add that forward who was loaned to Sunderland this window has already been recalled. They already had to pay the fee and get him back because they're basically now bringing everybody back to try to figure out what to do without Delap.
There's a Veep-style episode in all this because just before we started recording, apparently Nicholas Jackson is going back to Germany to sign ultimately for Bayern Munich. So
snip, snap, man.
Yeah.
It takes a toll.
Yeah. So let's make a documentary about this whole episode.
All right. Well, I hope there's a documentary made about Everton. Their start to the season, they're in 5th, Graham. 6 points, 2 wins, another win this weekend against Wolves. Wolves who are struggling, but who cares? It's Everton's story, Graham. And it's Jack Grealish's story at that. He dishes out a brace of assists. He is looking confident and happy and like he enjoys the football again. And I think the world is better for it.
Yeah, I don't want to alarm anyone, but Everton might actually be quite fun to watch this season. I don't know how that's happened, but Jack Grealish, he looks back to being Jack Grealish already. Iliman Ndiaye is good fun to watch and is like a dribbly attacker. Dewsbury Hall has really hit the ground running. It's been a lot better. I didn't think he was this good, actually, Dewsbury Hall, but he's been tremendous to start the season for Everton. And the rotations between those 3 players in this game and what we've seen so far are just really solid, really natural. They've still to integrate dribbling as well, which will be fun. So, they're an entertaining team to watch, which for a David Moyes side is definitely a vibe shift, but I'm enjoying it.
Up next for them, Aston Villa. Graham, is that appointment viewing, or would you go Bournemouth versus Brighton first?
Oh, both of them are. I mean, Villa aren't really. They don't seem like they're up to much at the moment. So that might be a case of like a statement performance by Everton, showing how far they have come. In terms of it, like an even contest right now, good vibes on both sides. I think Bournemouth maybe takes it.
I like it. Less good vibes for Wolves. We'll see what they do in the international break and how they come back from that one. For now, Graham, we are going to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk briefly about the Bundesliga, a little La Liga, and then we will be out of here. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Graham, we're moving to the Bundesliga. We should hold our hands up and say we got a little bit of stick on the Discord for last week, basically saying it was Bayern Munich's season to lose. They are joint top of the table. It's them, Frankfurt, and Köln. I feel like Frankfurt could hang around. I don't know if promoted Köln are going to be hanging out at the top of the table. But Bayern get the 3-2 win over Augsburg. They are starting pretty strongly so far, as are Eintracht Frankfurt. Leverkusen, not starting quite as strongly. And now here we are, 2 games in. There is a new manager to be hired because Erik ten Hag is out after 2 games in charge. I watched this entire game in which Leverkusen take the lead 3-1, go up a man, and then find a way to concede 2 to end up with a draw. And yet, I don't think it was like a fully shambolic performance. I don't think it was so abysmal that you can point to it as like, this is the reason. It's clearly the manager is not the right fit tactically, and like therefore we have to part ways. I think there is a good amount of that in this performance, but I think that it also speaks to other things happening, other ways in which he has sort of limited his appeal, is how I'm going to put it, to the decision makers at Leverkusen that has led them to this decision.
Yeah, so I didn't actually. I saw the highlights because obviously it was a pretty calamitous collapse, so it was bouncing around on social media. So I've seen the way that the goals went in, and I've seen the highlights, but I didn't watch this full match as you did, Taylor. So maybe I'm speaking from a position of ignorance. But on the face of things, this seems like there's two sides to this, right? On the face of it, seems like it's a pretty incredible decision by Bayer Leverkusen, who have sold all their best players this summer and then sacked their new manager after 2 league games. Like it's a proper Brian Clough at Leeds sort of situation. I saw Karl Anka say that Leverkusen have basically used Erik ten Hag as a pain sponge to sell all their best players in the summer, and
he's
now they can actually.
He's familiar with the role. It's fine.
He's done it before. He is the true sack boy. Now Karl was saying like Leverkusen can now actually rebuild without all that baggage. So I do feel sorry for Ten Hag in a sense, but reading a lot of the reporting from Germany today, it seems like Leverkusen were so unhappy with the way things were trending under Ten Hag that they felt they had no choice but to make a call before the situation gets any worse. Apparently they were unhappy with how Ten Hag wanted to move away from the back three system. Rolfes, who is the sporting director, made a public call for that to be the framework moving forward. Of course, that's what Leverkusen used under Xabi Alonso. That then created a division between those two figures from the get-go. They clashed over transfers as well.
Did you read the Xhaka one? That was interesting to me.
Not in depth. No. What happened with Xhaka?
Essentially, they felt the decision makers like they had Ten Hag's approval to pursue that sale with an idea that like he's an aging asset. We're getting a huge amount of money to sell him on. He is very much a like prime example of a player under Xabi Alonso. So you could make an argument: you sell him, you get a bunch of money, you can use that for a rebuild, new era, like start of new things. We can spin this really well. Cool. And then Ten Hag publicly says, I don't want him sold. He's part of my plans. I want to keep him. I aim to keep him here. And that just throws a wrench into things completely. And so even when they go through with the sale, what could have been a sort of, I still think it was a risky decision to get rid of a veteran player who's so important to that locker room. But the amount of money, you could spin it as like it's a rebuild. We're getting a lot of money. It's worth it. We're backing the manager. And instead, you can't say you're backing the manager because you're publicly selling a player that he wants. And so it immediately creates negative headlines about a move that could have been positive, or at the very least could have trended positive. And I think those moments in a vacuum aren't enough, but you add them up and they create a situation that I think you're speaking to of bad communication, poor communication, a lack of just general cohesion, and a feeling like things are not moving in the right direction.
And communication, or lack of good communication, was one of the things that I think led to Ten Hag's downfall at Manchester United as well, not being able to get ideas across to players and communicating with the front office and even with the fans and the media in a foreign country. He's proven himself. I don't know if I actually don't even know if he speaks German. I presume he does, having worked in Germany for so long at Bayern Munich. But so I don't know if his German is any better than his English, which was always a little bit shaky. But communication has been an issue for him in the past. It felt like, or it reads like, he kind of lost the dressing room as well. Not only did he lose the front office, I often think that term is overused, and it very rarely happens at elite level football. Sounds like that is what happened at Leverkusen here, that he never had buy-in from the squad. Some players had raised concerns with the front office over training methods and how ill-prepared that they felt for the start of the season. So as far as Leverkusen saw it, it was an untenable situation that went beyond the results, which also haven't been great. And in that respect, they might have made the right decision here. If they feel so strongly that they are heading down the wrong path, why persist with it for any longer, as weird as the timing may seem?
What do you think this does to, at the very least, our perception of Erik ten Hag, or the perception of him as a manager? Because I think you laid it out well, like in your opening thoughts, that this is a Leverkusen team that had a very clear style of play with a very popular and exciting manager who is no longer there. They sold off a lot of the assets that allowed that style and system to work, especially key performers and key roles. There is an idea that like this isn't really on him, that maybe it just wasn't the best stylistic or personality fit, so they made the decision as quickly as they needed to, and we've seen this happen before. Bielsa has, I think, 11 minutes in charge of Lazio at one point. Jesse Marsch, even when he takes over Leipzig, ends up sort of mutually parting ways with a feeling of, I wasn't ready for this gig, I wasn't right for this gig, I wasn't the manager they wanted, they needed to move in a different direction, so did I. And I think you can come out of moments like this, if not unscathed, then just grazed. I'm not sure that's how Ten Hag comes out of this after Manchester United and then this one. It starts to feel like there is a pattern to these things, more so than another outlier.
It doesn't look great for Ten Hag. The optics are absolutely terrible. I've got a lot of conflicting thoughts, because I think one of the things I did underestimate is just how much of a hospital pass of a job this was. I actually, when he was appointed, I thought, right, this is a good platform for Ten Hag to go in there, good level. There won't be the expectation to win the title in his first season, but he'll be in the Champions League and so on. I don't know if I fully expected Leverkusen to basically sell their entire team this summer, and that just put a lot of pressure on him to hit the ground running. And when you add in the division between him and the front office, it felt like, whether through his own fault or otherwise, he was set up to fail. There was just no way that this was ever going to work for him. So I still don't discount what we saw from Ten Hag at Ajax, but one of my main takeaways is, between Manchester United and Leverkusen, he is not the manager for a chaotic situation and a chaotic environment. At Ajax, he had Ajax, the set of play is established. There's only so much that you can deviate from that style of play, and obviously they've got the academy, and he's got a ready-made supply of players into that first team, and they're the dominant force in that country, and culturally they have that position. And at Manchester United and at Leverkusen, he hasn't had all of those things. So his stock is absolutely down for me. How could it not after this debacle for him? But I maybe wouldn't write him off entirely. There's still a coach in there.
Nah, you can write him off. It's fine. Stock up for me is the usage of the phrase hospital pass or hospital ball. I kind of forgot about that one. It's a great one. It's for the uninitiated, it's the under-hit pass that basically is going to lead to a tackle that will put your teammate in a hospital. And in that way, I think it's a pretty good way to describe what Erik ten Hag walked into at Leverkusen and the kind of situation he was handed. I'm glad, I guess, in the end he gets to be the pain sponge, even if he is not. We'll see what happens next for Leverkusen. For now, Graham, let's move to La Liga. Let's talk Barcelona's 1-1 draw away with Rayo Vallecano, where Barcelona were maybe happy to get out of there with the point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Vallecas is always a tough place for Barcelona to go. They've now won just once of their last 5 visits there, so traditionally this is a difficult place for them to visit. And they were fortunate not to lose here, because Rayo were well worth a point. They matched Barcelona for energy and intensity. Hansi Flick and a couple Barcelona players, their comments after this were quite interesting. They seem quite concerned about that lack of intensity, and there is a discourse around Barcelona that maybe they have dropped off from what they had last season, which is something that has happened previously for Hansi Flick at Bayern Munich, and particularly with the Germany job. So we'll keep an eye on that. But Rayo were just so good at hassling and harrying Barcelona, and winning the ball high up was one of the most stark things about the way that they played in this game. And when they did that, they then got numbers into the box, like they did for the equalising goal. When there's so many players forwards, Barcelona are just overwhelmed, and they leave Fran Perez at the back post to finish on the volley. There were a good few moments like that when Barcelona just couldn't handle the numbers coming at them, and they would have lost had it not been for Joan Garcia, who was a brick wall in this game. I think he's the Barcelona player who comes out of this with more credit than anyone else, certainly more credit than the VAR team, who conveniently... the whole system went down for the Barcelona penalty, which looked a little bit dubious. I think VAR probably would have upheld it, just because it's one of those ones where if the referee gives it on the pitch, there's maybe not enough to overturn it. But it certainly wasn't a slam dunk of a penalty decision.
What does that mean, Graham, for people who didn't see, when you say VAR went down? Is it the referee staring at a blank screen for a minute and then being like, yeah, sure, penalty?
Pretty much it. Computer says no. The whole system wasn't working, so they couldn't go to VAR, so they just had to go with the on-field decision. It is a whoopsie. We've seen it a couple times before, but it's very inconvenient. I'm sure this won't lead into conspiracy theories in the Spanish media. Real Madrid will have nothing to say about this, of course. But it's inconvenient when it happens during a penalty award. And what was also inconvenient in the second half for Barcelona was the changes that they made were really, really ineffective. Marcus Rashford
there
in particular.
Yeah.
Really disappointing.
His 50-yard shot didn't do it for you?
So you've seen that. Yeah. So there was a moment late on, which Taylor's referencing, where Barcelona have players forwards. This actually got to the point of the game where they were pressing late on, despite everything that they'd faced. And Rashford just dumps you called it a shot. I don't know what it was. I thought maybe he tried like a diagonal and he just completely mishit it. Either way, he just dumps it straight into the opposition goalkeeper. And the exasperation from Lamine Yamal and the other a few other Barcelona players was telling.
Familiar, I will say.
Yeah. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I don't know. Just watching Rashford for this Barcelona team in the first few games of the season, I just doubt whether he has the technical ability to be a Barcelona player. Like, he doesn't have the nimbleness. So we'll see how he gets on over the next few games.
Do you have any concerns about Real Madrid in their 2-1 win over Mallorca? They are top of the table, 9 points from 3 games. That's a pretty okay start.
Yeah, I mean, I have some concerns in that they're not quite fully there. They're sort of playing in second gear at the moment. But Alonso is still figuring out this Real Madrid team. So it's still quite fluid in terms of his lineups and players coming in and out of the side. So Trent was back in after being dropped for the match against Oviedo. I think what's key for him is having Valverde on the right side of the midfield, where he offers quite a bit of protection in front of him. Maston Tuano seems to have become one of Alonso's favourites, and Alonso has spoken about how he likes how Maston Tuano is able to take the ball in and have like lots of touches to get Real Madrid higher up the pitch. And people have taken that as shots fired at Rodrigo, who maybe makes Real Madrid a bit too transition focused for Xabi Alonso's liking. No transfer chat around him today, so it seems like he is going to stay at Real Madrid. So I don't know how that pans out for him over the course of the season. But the player who is most transformed under Xabi Alonso, and this goes back to the Club World Cup, we spoke about it at the time, is Arda Güler.
Yes, sir.
I didn't really see this. We're talking about Szoboszlai as a right back. Didn't see that coming. I did not see Arda Güler, who previously was this sort of tricky winger. I never saw him being used as a creative central midfielder, someone who wants to get on the ball and play forward. He's been brilliant at it since that's become his role for Real Madrid under Alonso. I think Alonso has moved him a little bit further forward than the kind of double pivot role that he had at the Club World Cup, where maybe he just doesn't have the physicality or the defensive instincts to play that role. But when you get Tchouaméni and Valverde, who between them cover so much ground. You've got Valverde coming out over to the right to provide protection for Trent. You've then got Valverde offering like forward momentum as well. That just gives Güler a platform to really like pick passes, and he scores the first goal in this game. So yeah, he's looking increasingly influential for Real Madrid. And then the other player who just looks so at home in a Xabi Alonso team is Dean Huijsen. Who started really, really well. He's an unreal player. Like, he's got absolutely everything that a modern centre-back needs, and he's already really, really important to how Real Madrid play out from the back. He makes good decisions. Even for the first goal, his header back across goal for Arda Güler is just so precise. Like, that's such a difficult thing to do. He's kind of in mid-air, and then he guides it back across into the box. So yeah, I think he's the real deal. The two of them have been really impressive to start the season.
Real Madrid next faced Sociedad after the international break. Sociedad 17th, 2 points to start the season. Maybe not the strongest of opponents, so it feels like a good opportunity for Madrid to continue to kind of progress and gel and figure things out. Because again, this is a Madrid team that didn't have Camavinga, Bellingham, and Ferland Mendy due to injury. Rudiger and Alaba are on the bench for the entirety of this one. Rodrigo comes off the bench. Brahim Diaz does the same. It just feels like it's a team that still have plenty of options to try to find a way to integrate, to try to find a way to get the kind of best out of and figure out who maybe ends up surplus to requirement. It I think speaks to a lot of lingering questions and potential concerns from Madrid, but also I think starting the season about as strongly as we could have expected, or Madrid fans could have hoped for. Yeah, absolutely. I think it was always expected that there would be some sort of process, and this is such a big gear shift for Real Madrid to go from Ancelotti ball to what Xabi Alonso ultimately wants them to be. And it might not be completed this season. This might be a 2-season transition for Real Madrid, but I think we're starting to see that process from Alonso where he is, when I talk about Trent and Valverde, like he's starting to figure out which players work together, like Tchouaméni and Valverde in central midfield, and then Güler slightly ahead of them. There's still big question marks over like Vinicius Jr., who was very good in this game, but
has come in and out of the team to start the season. He's a bit of an awkward fit for a Xabi Alonso side. Alexander-Arnold himself has come in and out of the team. So I do expect at some point there will be some big casualties. I kind of expected Rodrigo would be out the door this summer, and he's still on the outside looking in. So I don't feel good about his Real Madrid future going forward. But there's very much a process that's happening under Alonso, and it's interesting to see it.
Graham, let's briefly talk Serie A for a moment. We'll get to everything else in the Patreon episode, the Weekend Review Extra Edition. For now, we've got Pulisic scoring goals, Graham. All is right with the world.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
We're just ignoring the fact that he didn't start this game. But yeah, came off the bench in the second half for AC Milan against Lecce, who Helen Mirren is a big Lecce fan, proper Lecce, and she was at this game in a Lecce shirt, which you learn something new every day. But first win of the season I just felt like I had to mention that.
No, I mean, it's not that. It's just like Helen Mirren, she's making choices at this point in her career. Her Mobland appearance is one of the more unhinged performances I've seen in a TV show, and I guess being a Lecce fan also slightly unhinged.
Apparently, she has a home in the region of
course
Lecce,
she does.
So
of course she does.
That makes a little bit more sense. But I just love that she turned up to the game in I think it was like a classic Lecce shirt, or maybe it was this season's Lecce shirt. But the vibes were off the scale. For Milan, first win of the season. They lost obviously at home to Cremonese. We spoke about it last week. This was much more positive. Interesting that Allegri moved away from the front two that he's used all the way through the summer. He started Jimenez as the number 9, and then got Salamakers and Loftus-Cheek closer to him as the dual 10s. Then it was Esteban on the left wing as one wing back, and then a certain Yunus Musa on the right as the right wing back. I know that's not what we want to see, particularly Joe wants to see him in central midfield. I thought he was decent in this game. He got forward pretty well, and quickly. It's quite clear Allegri doesn't trust him to create with the ball in possession sequences centrally, which is a concern for him getting minutes in that area of the pitch. But as someone who can provide mobility down the right side, I think he offers this Milan team something. And then Pulisic comes off the bench in the second half, pounces on a bouncing ball to go clean through, finishes really nicely. So there are some things there for Milan to build on. Modric was excellent again with some of his passes forwards. I thought Milan were a real threat from set pieces as well, which is something that Allegri has spoken about, and that's been a big focus for him. So it's not impossible that they could grow into the season because there's still a lot of talent in that squad. But I think the sense, with this being deadline day today, I think the sense from a lot of Milan fans is they've maybe not done the business, particularly in the attack, that they expected them to.
One move that is expected to go through is Yunus Musa. I believe at time of recording he's agreed personal terms with Atalanta. I don't know if that will end up being a loan or a permanent move. Both seem to be rumored. Maybe it's a loan with an obligation.
Is that reported today, Taylor? I actually hadn't seen. I knew there was Atalanta rumours, but I didn't know it was that concrete.
I think it progressed to last night here on the East Coast, late last night, early Monday morning, that talks had engaged.
Interesting. He starts at this game then for Milan. Their business has been a little bit baffling. Like Jimenez as well, starting this match when they're looking to replace him, and I've spent all summer trying to get in a new centre forward. Don't know what's going on there.
They made some choices. You know who else made some choices, Graham? Cremonense. You mentioned them.
Yeah.
Third in the table, 6 points from 2 games, and we should say, Graham, they're no longer Cremonense. They are now Jamie Vardy's Cremonense.
There's a party.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen the video of him arriving?
No.
And there's just like a crowd of fans in classic Serie A fashion, a crowd of fans waiting to that's a real culture clash, isn't it? Jamie Vardy in Italy. Don't know if he's going to like it.
He's going to do the opposite McTominay and eat a tomato and be like, nah, that's rubbish.
He's going to try out the entire Italian McDonald's menu before the end of the month. The McFlurries are better here.
Exactly. He's going to add his highly controversial food takes of the McDonald's food is better in Italy. Yes, I love that idea.
You can get a beer with your Big Mac.
I would pay to watch that series. Jamie Vardy Food Guide. The Burger King here tastes like the Burger King elsewhere. 5 stars. That's what we need from this world.
I would watch.
All right, Graham. Well, thank you for spending so much time talking with me and me alone about the weekend that was. There was a lot of stuff going on. There remains a lot of stuff going on because the transfer window is not yet shut. We will certainly be back to talk about that again later in the week. For now, Graham Ruthven, thank you for watching all the Soccers, as usual, my friend.
Thank you, Taylor Rockwell.
Listeners, thank you all for listening to us talk about all the Soccers. We appreciate that too, and we'll talk to you again very soon.